Okay, so tonight we're gonna make a grilled pork chop, or maybe I'll just pan sear it so you can you can see that if you don't have a grill pan. And I'm gonna make it with some delicious apples and sage. So we're going to cook the apples in butter, and then add a little bit of sage, and use that with the pork chops. Okay, so I'm going to use 2 apples. I don't have an apple peeler or an apple corer. I'll show you how I do it. I just use vegetable peeler, and you're kind of holding it in your hand so the stem part is at the top, and you just go right around the apple. I already did one of them for you, so now I'm going to do the second one just to show you how to do it. And I know some of you like to eat the apple peel. The apple peel's got actually a lot of the vitamins in the apple. It gives it a bit of the tartness that goes along with the nice sweetness in the middle. I like the apple peels. Okay, so there's the peel. Now here's your apple with the stem side up, and you're basically going to peel it like this. You're going to miss a little bit of it, but the goal of it is to not get too into the core. See how I've got right just on the edge of the core? And I go for around 4 times like that. And there it is. Okay? Now if you go too far out, you're going to miss half of the delicious part of the apple. And yeah, it's true that you're missing a little bit right in there. You can just eat that if you want. Okay? So there's your apple. Now I take each of these slices and I go in half with them, and then 3 or 4 slices that way. I'm just basically dicing them. They don't have to be perfect. We're going to be cooking them. But I want the pieces pretty small because I'll show you when I do them in the pan, I like having a lot of the surface space in the pan because then I get more browned apple. And the browned apple and a bit of butter is really tasty. Okay, but they don't have to be perfect, and they don't have to be too small. You could definitely make them larger than that if you want. So here's my 2 apples worth right there. And I'm going to move you over to the stove and get these guys started. Okay, so going with our apples, we're going to have some sage. You can grow your own sage. You can buy the sage in the grocery store really easily. The thing you need to be a little cautious with sage is that it's a pretty potent, pretty strong flavor. So you don't want to use too much. These are nice, beautiful little leaves on there. You just peel them off so you're not getting all the stem. Okay, and I'm going to say, like, that's probably plenty right there. I'm going to take that top part off, but that's probably enough. You don't want a whole lot more than that. Maybe I'll take a couple more of these tiny ones, or as we've been saying in these videos, teeny. And I'm going to leave it at that, and we'll add as we need to. And basically, no surprise, you're going to do a real fine little chop of your sage here. Sage is one of my favorites, but you don't want a big mouthful of sage, that's for sure. So you do need to chop it fairly fine. Like I've shown you before, you can put your non-holding hand on the top of the blade and get that chopped nice and fine. Okay, so you see that? So there we go. So we got that ready. So now when our apples are all cooked and when we're ready to go, we'll add that in at the end, and we'll be in good shape. So we're going to do this with our pork chops, and you can get your apples done a little bit beforehand, no problem. So I'm putting in here, well, look at that. We can even look on the thing. I put in 1 tablespoon of butter. And that should be plenty. And before it starts browning, I'm going to add my apples. Now you want to spread your apples around, and you know, I probably could have used a bigger pan here, but I want to get as much of them on the surface of the saute pan as I can. I got them pretty high up there. Now here are a couple things you can think about. I'm going to do these, I'm cooking the apples in butter, and I'm going to do them with sage. And they're really good with cranberries too. So if you wanted to add some fresh cranberries in, you can do that. I may add in a little bit of brown sugar and sweeten it up even a little bit more. Or if you have dried cranberries, or if you have raisins, you know, anything like that can be thrown in here and added to this, no problem at all. So I'm going to actually see if we have some dried cranberries. That would be a tasty addition. Okay, let's see here. Looks like they're browning a bit. Right? Those look pretty nice. Oops. All right, I'm going to do the pork chop in the grill pan. You could do it in a cast iron pan. You could do it in a stainless saute pan. You basically sear it the same way. But I'm going to do it in the grill pan tonight. And this is a big pork chop on the bone, okay? And all I did was put a little bit of olive oil on it to see a little better here. A little bit of olive oil on it to keep it from sticking. Put it in the grill pan and get the grill pan really nice and hot, and in it goes. Okay. Now this is a thick pork chop. I've got my oven preheated to about 400 degrees, and I'm going to cook it so it's kind of searing on each side, and then I'm going to put it on a baking sheet on a piece of foil, and I'm going to finish it in the oven. And it takes a bit of time because it's on the bone, but I definitely recommend pork like this on the bone instead of boneless. You can buy a pork tenderloin. We'll do a pork tenderloin some night together, but pork chops, boneless pork chops, by the time you cook them, they tend to get pretty dried out. You cook them on the bone like this, and they come out really juicy and absolutely delicious. They've got much better flavor. So I definitely recommend going with the pork chop on the bone. So I turned it once. There you go. That's looking pretty good. I'm going to season with just a little bit of salt. Like I always say, you can add more salt, some pepper. So really what we're doing now is we're just going to sear it on this second side, and then into the oven it's going to go. Okay, I'm going to shut my stove off now. Start to cool the pan down. There you go, onto the baking sheet, into the oven. That's probably going to take about 15 minutes. I'm going to check it in probably 10 or 12, and then it'll probably take about 15. Here we are with our nice apples. And I'm going to add a bit more butter, maybe half a tablespoon, maybe a little bit more. That looks kind of tasty, doesn't it? And now I'm going to add a little brown sugar. Not too much. That's like maybe a tablespoon. Optional ingredient for sure. You don't have to put that in there. Look at that. And then the sage. I started with about half the sage. Let's take a look and see what we think. You would not believe how good this smells. You gotta try this. Ooh, that's gonna be so tasty. I think we can handle it. We're gonna go for the sage. And that's it. Okay, we're done here. No, we're not. I changed my mind about that. I realized earlier I didn't have any cranberries, but I do have some walnuts. So I've got just a small handful of walnuts that I chopped up a little bit. You can see they're not in huge pieces. Throw those guys in there at the end. So now we have our apples, our walnuts, our sage, a little bit of brown sugar, a little bit of butter. You can add a little salt. There's nothing wrong with adding a little bit of salt, not much. Just a little sprinkle. And look at that, that's ready to go. Okay, so we're gonna put that on our pork chop. Okay, how do we know when our pork chop is done? Basically, what you do is you cut into where the bone is, okay? And you look to see if it's cooked through at the bone. And you can see there, I wanted to show you this, you can see there that's still pretty pink in there, right? And that is still not quite done. It's not too far, and the days of cooking pork until it's dark brown are way past. But, and as a grandmother I knew said, there's no trichinosis left in this country, which may or may not be true, but that's not quite done, so we're going to put it back in, but 5 more minutes and it'll be ready to go. I'm going to cut this pork off the bone tonight, and essentially what you do is you follow the bone with your knife, and you need to do it very, very, very carefully, right? But that's pretty much what you do. Okay, so that on there. Let's get that on the plate here. Okay. And then here we have some of our apple and walnut. You can just put that right on the top like that. Look at that. So that didn't take many ingredients and it didn't take much time. What I have here is a little piece of sage that we can put that gives you kind of a nice little decoration, gives you an indication of what's in there. And then if you were following the other videos tonight, we have a yellow rice. So there's your pork chop with your apples and walnuts and sage and a little brown sugar, and your spinach salad with orange segments and red onions, and your turmeric rice with shallots and a little bit of garlic and peas and a little bit of scallions. All right, enjoy that dinner.